Okay, guys, let's look at these two examples. These are both from WebAssign, but I want to make sure you guys understand what these questions are asking and exactly how to answer them. So if you look at this first one over here on the left, it says write the first 5 terms of the arithmetic sequence. So think about this. The formula to write the arithmetic sequence is a sub n, right, equals the first term plus n minus 1 times the common difference, correct? So you need to have those two things, the first term and the common difference, to write a rule or to write the formula. Do you have either of those things in this first example? No, we'll call this 1. You don't have those two things, but you know because of one word in this question, because it says arithmetic, you should think linear, and then you should also think that your common difference is the same as the slope, right? This only works for arithmetic. It's not with geometric. We'll show you how to do geometric stuff tomorrow. But when you have a linear function, you can think, oh, linear, arithmetic, those are the same thing, so my common difference is the slope. Why is that helpful? Well, they give me 2 terms. They tell me that the 5th term is 13, correct? And they tell me that the 14th term is 62.5. What can I do with those 2 sets of values to tell me what the common difference is? You can find the slope. So I'm just going to say my common difference is going to be 62.5 minus 13 over 14 minus 5. What's 62.5 minus 13? 49.5. Thank you. Be on the ready. What's 14 minus 5? 9. All right. Somebody last period's like, no, what do I do with that? Try to divide it in your calculator, see what happens. What do you get? 5.5. Guys, every time you have a problem like this, you might get a decimal, but it'll be a terminating one that you can plug into an equation. You're not going to get something crazy. If you did something wrong. So I know now one piece of information. I know the common difference. Now what do I do? All right, I take the formula again. A sub n equals the first term, n minus 1 times the common difference. Well, I know the common difference. I know my common difference is 5.5. Agreed? Do I know the first term yet? No, but do I know some other information that I can plug in here? What do I know? I know the 5th term, and I know what? The 14th term. And I can use either piece of information to figure out what the first term is. If I know that the 5th term is 13, I can say, well, I can put 13 on the outside there, and I can say 5 there. The 13th term, your a sub n, a sub 13, I'm sorry, a sub 5 is 13, and then I plugged in 5 for the term number. And now all we do is simplify. Now I say, okay, let's do this first. What's 5 minus 1? 4. And then what is 4 times 5.5? 22, even? Okay, so now I'm going to subtract 22 from both sides. And I get the first term of this sequence is how much? What's 13 minus 22? Negative 9, okay. Now what about if you're like, well, I don't want to use 13. I want to use the 62.5. Can you do that? Absolutely, let's do it over here. I'm going to say 62.5 on the outside here equals the first term plus, well, I didn't use the 5th term. Which term did I use? The 13th, right? So 13 minus 1 times your common difference of 5.5. Is it the 14th? It is, my bad. Thank you. What's 14 minus 1 going to be? 13, that's what I got in my head. But thank you. So guys, we're going to subtract here. I get 13, so I have 62.5 equals the first term plus, what's 13 times 5.5? 71 what? Okay, 71.5. And then what do I do to both sides? Subtract 71.5. So I get here, a sub 1 equals what? What's 62.5 minus 71.5? Negative. What? You guys get negative 9? Look, we got the same thing each time. So now, I can say, oh, let me write the rule then. A sub n equals the first term, which is negative 9, plus n minus 1 times my common difference, which is 5.5. What do I do with that 5.5? I'm going to distribute it. So I have negative 9 plus 5.5n minus 5.5. And this is where we got to be real careful with science, guys. It's a negative 9 and a negative 5.5. What does that give me? 14.5 minus 14.5. Now I can take this rule and find the first 5 terms. To find the first term, you plug in 1. The second term, you plug in 2. The third term, you plug in 3. You can do that exact same thing. Find the slope and then use whatever term numbers that they give you every single time when this is an arithmetic sequence. Why? Because in the arithmetic sequence, your common difference is always going to be the slope. Does that make sense? All right, now, this other one over here, we'll call this number 2. I changed it a little bit from what you guys have on WebAssign, just because on the test, you're going to see something like this. It says, find the partial sum. So remember yesterday, partial sum was this formula. S sub n equals n over 2 times a sub 1 plus a sub n, the last term. You will be given that formula. You will be given that formula. So understand that. So the 3 things you need here are how many terms am I talking about? I need to know the first term, and I need to know the last term. So yesterday when I gave you a sequence that had a starting and an ending, or if I gave you a sequence and you could visualize, you could actually point your finger to the first term, then figure out what the last one was. You could do that. In this case, they're not doing that. What is this asking you to do? Evaluate this expression by starting with what number? And then going all the way up to what? And then adding every single one of them together, right? That would take you the entire class period to do 1. So this is why you have to use the formula. But I want you guys to understand something. In order to find out the number of numbers, okay, think about this. If I told you, if it looked like this, 250 on top, and I told you n equals 1, start with, how many numbers would you tell me there were? 250. How did you get 250? Oh, thanks. Because it's obvious, because you're starting with 1. Now think about it, guys. I'm going to tell you a rule. I'm going to tell you a little formula. I'm going to say top minus bottom plus 1. Yes, it is obvious when I tell you start with 1, end with 250. You're like, oh, there's 250 numbers. But think about this. What's 250 minus 1? Plus 1. 250, okay? So if you're starting here, and I say to you, how many terms am I talking about? I'm not starting with number 1. This is where you guys would be like, well, is it 250 minus 6? So 244, or is it 245? Because you're including 6 and you're including 250. Do you know which one it is? You have to use that little formula, top minus bottom plus 1. If you just say 250 minus 6, you're going to get the wrong number of terms because you are plugging in 6 and you're going all the way up to 250. So whenever you have a number that is not 1 on the bottom, you have to account for that. Also, guys, if you started with 0, how many terms would you have? If it said start where n equals 0, you'd have 251, correct? So you have to remember that rule, no matter what. Even if it's a 1 on the bottom, just remember, oh, top minus bottom plus 1. So if I say top minus bottom plus 1, how many terms am I talking about? Where there's 250s on the top, minus 6 plus 1. What's 250 minus 6? 244 plus 1 is? So there's 245 terms total. That's your n value. Always remember that, because if it said start with 0, you guys would say 250 minus 0 is 250, plus 1 is 251. You have to account, or else you'll get the numbers off. How do I figure out what the first term is that they want me to, that I evaluate with? What do I plug in? I plug in 6. I don't plug in 1, guys. I'm looking for the first term that they're talking about. It's actually a sub 6, because it's telling me to start with what? 6. So just pay attention to little stuff like that. So I'm going to say, okay, it's 780 minus 3 times what? 6. Okay, so what's 780 minus 18? Come on, calculator. 780 minus 18. 760. Okay, 762. Now the last term. What am I plugging in to find the last term? 250. So it's 780 minus 3 times 250. What's 780 minus 3 times 250? 30. Okay. Now do you have all the information you need to plug in the formula? Yes. If I give you the formula, okay, great. But if you guys don't know how to figure out how many terms there are, how to figure out what the first term is, how to figure out what the last one is, you're not going to get the question right. So now you would say, okay, I'm going to find the sum, and it's going to be 245 divided by 2. The first term, which is 762, plus the last term, which is 730. What's 245 divided by 2? 122.5, okay. Decimals are okay in this case. What's 62 plus 30? 792? All right, and then multiply those two together. It's going to be a big number. 97,000, like that? No decimal? All right, there you go. Now, you would get the same thing if you plugged in 6, then 7, then 8, then 9, then 10, all the way to 250 and add them all together. Yes, sir? Sure. But that only works, guys, if you get this information correct. Remember, if you are given that sigma notation and it says to find the partial sum, this is the formula they want you to use, but you have to get the correct first term, you have to get the correct last term, and you have to have the correct number of numbers. So it's top minus bottom plus 1. Comprende? One more thing. If you have something like this, I keep getting the same question. I said it yesterday, but I'll say it again, right? I have this sequence, right? And it says find a sub 1, a sub 2, whatever, a sub 3, and then it asks for the common difference. First of all, can you find the first 3 terms? Yeah, what do you plug in? 1, 2, and 3. What I need to see from you guys in order to get credit is 2 to the first power plus 4 equals 6. 2 to the second power plus 4 equals 8, right? 2 to the third power plus 4 equals 12. You guys agree? Now, what is the common difference here? There's none. It says in the directions, if it's not arithmetic, to write none for the common difference. I keep getting that question. What am I supposed to write? I'm like, read the directions. You only have a common difference. Only have a common difference if your sequence is what? Arithmetic. I keep saying the same thing because I want you guys to remember that. When I see arithmetic, what do I think of? Linear. What do I think of? Slope. Arithmetic, you add or subtract the same number to get to the next. All right, another question, because I would let everybody work and then other things were coming up. What about if you have this? A sub n equals 6 minus 4n. And it says find the first terms. They got all the terms right. And then it said, what's the common difference? Guys, what's the common difference here? Negative 4. It's not 4. It's negative 4. That sign stays with the number. Just like you would if you had x's and y's. If it's positive, there's either no sign or it's a plus. Like the 6 there is positive and the 4 is negative. Does everybody understand that? You guys see that? Okay. All right. This is your time, guys, to work on WebAssign, not to sit and talk about ridiculousness